Hi, everybody. Thanks for jumping on. We'll give folks just a few minutes here to get logged on, and then we will get started with the webinar. So just sit tight, and we'll start here shortly. Okay. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the MR4 2025 fall release webinar. Obviously, we've made our way into 2026 at this point, and I really hope that everybody had a great holiday season and a happy new year. I'm Zach Scarano, the Director of Product and Software here at Neraxon. And today I will walk you through the latest updates in MR4 and show how this release introduces more precise calibration tools, broader multi-directional force plate analysis, and a deeper insight into some real-world movement. We're going to keep the presentation focused. It's only about 25 to 30 minutes or so, and then we'll move into an open Q&A. And so during the presentation, if you do have any questions that come up, feel free to put those into the Q&A section or into the chat box on the Zoom window. And so with that, let's go ahead and take a look at today's agenda. So here's a quick look at the flow for today's session. We'll start with a brief overview of the release context, and then we'll move into the two main features that we had for this cycle, the new virtual calibration adjustment tool, or VCAT as we like to call it, and the expanded horizontal jump and change of direction force plate analytics. And after that, we'll cover the supporting updates. We have the optional pre-contact phase for jump and COD analysis, and added IMU acceleration support inside of the biofeedback interface. We'll wrap up with a couple takeaways and then open the floor for questions. And so with that, let's jump into the first feature. And so this release was intentionally focused. Instead of a large set of incremental updates, we prioritized some tools that we felt meaningfully expanded what users can measure. And you'll see improvements in the calibration flexibility, multi-directional force analysis, and early phase movement insight, as well as the real-time acceleration-driven feedback. And so the goal was, or rather the hope was that these updates would strengthen both clinical performance and research workflows as well for those that are looking at human movement at these deeper levels. So our first feature is the virtual calibration adjustment tool. And as any of you IMU users are aware, calibration is a major source of variability for these IMU workflows. And that's especially true for subjects who can't stand in that perfect neutral posture. So VCAT aims to eliminate that limitation. It allows you to refine the static calibration pose after the recording using any frame where the subject is standing as naturally as possible. We also have embedded markerless assisted suggestions to help you align the pose, and manual tools allow for these precise adjustments. And so the avatar updates instantly, and the corrected calibration is stored and can be applied to subsequent recordings. So it's a fairly smooth workflow. Some of you may be familiar with our calibration adjustment tool, which is the hardware version. And so the goal with this feature was to make the calibration adjustment a bit more accessible. While the precision of the hardware-based calibration adjustment tool is very high, it also comes with its own challenges working in certain environments, and also, requires the user to be very well versed in the anatomy in order to be able to digitize those different body points. And so moving into a software-based workflow makes this tool set much more accessible for standard users, and also is a much faster process to get to those corrected metrics that are important for ensuring reliable and useful inertial motion capture data. So the workflow is designed to be intuitive and not disruptive. And after capturing the calibration recording, you can open the tool by clicking on Model Options and then Adjust. Then you can select a frame to correct. Or if you're using the embedded workflow that we have for the walking calibration, you can follow the prompts to correct each of the poses. And that's what you're seeing here in the video right now, is moving into these prompted pose positions, standing with the front, and then turning to stand to face the left, then turning again to face the right side of the body with the camera. And those poses then have an automated workflow embedded inside of the software, which you can see here shortly, which will provide those prompts to correct the poses. And the tool uses these automated markerless assisted proposals, or you can also perform manual corrections by dragging the landmarks either or rotating the segments either on the video or on the avatar itself. And because everything updates instantaneously, you can get that immediate feedback. You can do your best to try and match the three-dimensional avatar to the position of the body that you're seeing in the video or, of course, in real life. And once saved, that corrected calibration becomes the basis for the session's motion capture. And so the goal would be to result in a more realistic joint angles and, a cleaner downstream analysis as well. And so, and the nice part again is that after performing this correction, those metrics store, and when you go and you do a measurement, subsequent measurements after that, these calibration metrics are automatically applied to that session. So the value of VCAT is especially clear in these clinical and field scenarios. Of course, not every subject can achieve the strict neutral posture, and even athletes, they have habitual alignment patterns that skew the traditional calibration method. And so VCAT lets the calibration reflect reality, not this idealized pose. And it's an intuitive software-driven tool that improves the reliability and gives users a transparent, controllable correction workflow. And one thing to note is that this is a completely unique capability to Neuraxon, and I hope demonstrates our dedication to pushing the boundaries of using IMUs in biomechanics. Now, before we move on, I do want to highlight a few practical considerations for VCAT, just so that everybody understands where the tool stands today and how to use it effectively. And so first, VCAT is currently released as a beta feature. It's fully functional, but we're still collecting user feedback to refine the workflow and expand its capabilities. So if you run into scenarios where VCAT could be improved, I would really appreciate hearing from you through our support team. It would be great to get that feedback, understand some of the hangups or the hiccups or the inconsistencies that you might experience so that we can continue to make performance improvements there, as well as user interface and user experience improvements. And secondly, the VCAT calibration workflow is currently only available with the walking calibration. So the other calibration routines like forward lean and the multi-pose calibration, they do not yet have this workflow embedded, but they will be delivered soon. But one thing to note is that these corrections can be applied to any recording and stored as calibration metrics, regardless if you're using the embedded workflow or you just have video and you just want to take a certain frame from the video and use that as your option to correct the calibration. Even without video, you can still apply these corrections to the avatar directly using the tools that are available to manipulate the segment rotations and positions. And third, when using the optional 2D markerless assistance, it's important to remember that the accuracy depends heavily on the camera view. And so the camera should be positioned directly in front of the subject, allowing the entire view of the subject to be available so you can see their whole body. And so skewed angles, of the camera, they're going to influence the joint angle estimates and affect the quality of the correction. And so keeping these considerations in mind will just help ensure that you get clean, reliable results, especially as we continue to enhance the tool. And it's important to note too that the VCAT is completely optional. So if your current calibration workflow works well for you, nothing changes unless you decide to use it. And so it may be a situation where, depending on the subject that you're working with, you may want to introduce that correction, whereas typical use cases don't require that level of detail. So those options are going to be available to you regardless. Okay, so next, our second flagship enhancement for this release transforms what a force plate can tell you. So historically, many systems only focused on the vertical jump metrics. And with this release, MR4 now supports change of direction analysis with force plates. So analyzing the actual shear forces in the AP and ML directions, subphase mechanics in the braking and propulsive subphases, as well as looking at asymmetries between sides. And so for sports performance or return to play or injury risk screening, this gives you a richer data to be able to assess agility and cutting mechanics and asymmetry and loading strategies. And so, from a practical standpoint, this allows you to objectively evaluate braking and propulsion and directional control during cutting and acceleration tasks without needing custom calculations or external tools. And so right now, it does, what we embedded in the fall release was the ability to look at these change of direction tasks or cutting analysis. And then coming here soon, we'll also be adding support for some additional horizontal jump types, like broad jumps off the plate or lateral jumps off the plate as well. So keep an eye out for that. So, as part of the change of direction analysis, we've also expanded the visualizations and metrics available inside of MR4. So we have added the shear force loop, which you can see down here in the right corner. And that lets you plot the AP and ML forces against each other. And this gives you a clear picture of how an athlete absorbs and redirects force during a cut or a horizontal jump. It's essentially a coordination map for the directional loading. And then on the top portion of the slide, we have our new horizontal jump parameters. And so MR4 now automatically calculates peak AP and ML loading, braking, and propulsive forces, along with their normalized versions and max rate of force development. And again, just something to note is that this is another very unique capability to Neuraxon. We really wanted to be able to take the 3D force plates that we have embedded inside of the system and deliver some use out of them, right? And so by creating these automated workflows for looking at cutting, looking at horizontal jumps, we're hoping that these tools can give our users a far more complete understanding of how an athlete is generating and controlling force in all directions, not just in the vertical direction. And the next enhancement is an optional pre-contact phase for jump and COD analysis. And so this allows you to look at what happens in those final milliseconds before ground contact. This is a window that's been shown to be highly relevant in ACL injury risk research, particularly some work by Benka and Zebis out of Denmark. And so in MR4, you can now define that custom pre-contact duration or pre-contact window. And the software automatically incorporates that window into the timeline and into the phased-based reporting available on these jump analyses or cutting analyses reports. And so for users working in ACL screening or return to sport decision making or neuromuscular readiness assessments, this addition brings MR4 into alignment with how these leading researchers are evaluating landing mechanics. And again, just hopefully gives you a tool set that's going to be, far more accessible than having to export this information and, write custom code or use external tools to look at, some of these more detailed human movement strategies. And now the next enhancement is the support for raw IMU acceleration inside the biofeedback interface. And so this opens up several new applications, but one of the most important is the ability to monitor tibial shock during running. And so acceleration at the lower leg is often a more sensitive indicator of impact loading than just joint kinematics alone, especially for evaluating technique or footwear or fatigue and return to run progression. So beyond running, of course, acceleration-based feedback is useful for any high velocity or impact-driven task. Think sprinting, skating, directional changes, plyometrics, just anywhere that you want immediate real-time cues tied to how an athlete is loading and absorbing forces. And as always, you can combine these acceleration channels with the traditional kinematic feedback or any of the other devices that you might be incorporating into your measurements. So EMG or force or pressure, or of course video. But the goal is to give users a more complete picture of how movement and impact relate in real time. And so, with VCAT, with the change of direction analysis, the pre-contact phase, and the acceleration biofeedback all in place, let's just quickly pull this together for a summary of what this release really delivers. So, to summarize, I just want to highlight a few key takeaways in terms of what this means for your day-to-day work. So first, VCAT gives you much more flexibility and accuracy in calibration, especially when working with athletes or patients who can't assume that perfect natural posture or neutral posture. This helps ensure that your joint angle data better reflects how people actually move without adding those extra steps or several retakes to your workflow. And second, the horizontal and change of direction force analysis expands what you can measure beyond those vertical tasks. And with automatic shear force metrics built in, you can directly evaluate braking, propulsion, and directional loading during cutting, accelerations, decelerations, and return to sport movements all within MR4 directly. Third, we have the pre-contact phase, which brings MR4 in line with the leading ACL research. Again, I would encourage you to look at these publications from Benka and Zebis. And these would give you more visibility into that neuromuscular preparation just before contact. And so, of course, this is particularly useful in assessing landing readiness, movement strategy, and injury risk. And finally, we have the acceleration-based biofeedback, which enables the real-time applications like monitoring tibial shock during running with those inertial sensors and adds this an objective way to assess impact loading during rehab, technique training, or these return to run progressions. And so taken together, these updates help you build a more complete picture of movement, and this is across clinical assessments, performance testing, and research as well. And using these tools that are fully integrated into your existing MR4 workflows, hopefully will allow you to take advantage of them and find great use cases for them. And of course, as always, continue to deliver feedback to us so that we can continue to make enhancements, make improvements across the board for these features and all of the other things that are embedded inside of the MR software. So to help you get the most out of the fall release, here are a few recommended next steps. So first, make sure your MR installation is up to date and the latest software version is available on our website. It's actually the link now has been updated. We just did release a patch this week. And so apologize for not getting that link changed there. But if you go to the website and go to our software downloads page, that will be the link that you find. And next, we definitely recommend reviewing the release notes and the tutorials. And so that web link there would allow you to view those tutorials and explanations of the features as well. And so you can learn a bit more about those. It details the walk through each of the features in detail and, of course, highlight the best practices for incorporating them into your workflows. And if you'd like to explore these new capabilities with some data, you can also download our demo records from our support page. And so these are useful for learning the tools, testing the new analyses, and just getting comfortable with the workflows before you begin applying them to your own data. And of course, if you have any questions or need help applying any of these features, our support team is always available to assist. And so please do not hesitate to reach out if you need anything. And we'll continue sharing updates by email. I think many of you are already signed up for our newsletters, but I would also recommend that you follow us on our social media pages just to stay informed about future releases, training content, and just overall product updates. We are very active on those channels and really try to provide a mix of content for educational purposes, for inspiration, and then of course to provide these communications of updates and new things that we're coming out with. Okay, so that wraps up the overview of the fall release. Again, I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. As I mentioned, you can access the release directly using the link here. And so that'll take you to that software downloads page that's going to have the latest version available. And then, of course, all of our additional tutorials and support articles and demo resources are then available at neuraxon.com/support content. And at this point, I'd love to hear from you, whether you have technical questions or workflow questions or just want to dig deeper into any of the new features. Please feel free to jump in with any questions that you might have. And of course, if anything does come up after the session, you can always reach out to us at info@neuraxon.com or support@neuraxon.com. And as I mentioned, please connect with us on social media as well at Naraxon USA. And so with that, we will open it up for Q&A. So, the first question is, can you overlay the force vector on video when performing the COD? Great question, and yes, definitely. So that is, one of our long-standing features for our force plate integrations with video, of course, is having the force vector overlaid onto the video. And so whether you're doing jumps or cuts or gait or balance and kind of stance tests, any of those things, you can incorporate that force vector feedback on the video for any of those measurements. It's available in real time. In addition to, of course, when you do record something, it'll be available when you play back that measurement. So you can review that in the viewer. And then if you're doing point of interest analysis and you're using the video to drive some of that, you'll see that force vector there as well. So great question, and yes, that capability is available across all the different force plate analyses that we support. Okay. Well, it looks like I offered great explanations for everything then. So again, if anything comes up or as you get started using the new updates, please do not hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. Of one thing I'll note is that you will all get a recording of this webinar as well. And so you'll have that in your inbox at some point here shortly. And I just would like to thank everybody for joining us again. And please keep an eye out for our next updates. We are consistently putting out software releases throughout the year, working on new feature updates, enhancements to the user interface and user experience. And as I mentioned previously, if you do have any questions or ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out and we will field those and put them onto our list. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great day, a great evening, wherever you are in the world, and we will see you next time. Bye.